Chapter 12: Psychoanalytic Approaches to Culture and the Self. The relationship between cultural theory and psychoanalytic theory is a complex one. There are clear affinities in as far as both see social life as essentially about meanings and emphasize the need for interpretation. First, psychoanalysis, in its traditional form at least, has tended to focus on the pathologies of the individual rather than on collective phenomena. Secondly, there is a tendency toward psychological and biological reductionism in much psychoanalytic thought. Sigmund Freud. Freud challenged the assumption that the self was merely what can be seen on the surface. He argued that identity, personality, and mental function were far more complex than anyone had previously imagined. First, he claimed that there was a basic split between the conscientious mind and a heightened unconscious mind. They were in constant interaction, existing alongside. These two levels was a split in the psyche between the the ego, and the superego. This term referred to aspects of the self rather than to concrete parts of the brain's anatomy. The idea is the realm of the first primitive instinct that wish for immediate gratification. The ego maintains a stable sense of self and is adaptive to reality. It is seen for reason and common sense. Feeling of conscience and morality can be found in superego. Post-Ferdinand theories of self and society. Psychoanalytic theory has not stood still since Freud's death. In many ways, civilization and its discontent sets the scene for this shift, with its interest in macro-sociological issues and the links between pathology and modernity. General characteristics of more recent psychoanalytic theory include a decreased emphasis of individual psychological pathologies as the cause of neuroses and a compensation interest in relation between people or between people and object. Second, a focus on the way that society and its cultural organization are implicated in the problems experienced by self. The third, an understanding of modern people as emotionally damaged, isolated, and suffering from imperfect in identity. This has replaced the Ferdinand image of sexual and neurotic malfunction. Jacques Lacan. For those influenced by structuralism, post-structuralism, and discourse analysis, Jacques lessons writing from the 1950s centuries and 1960s centuries are the key to theorizing the association of culture and psychoanalysis. One of the reasons for this is that his broadly post-structural approach shifts responsibility for the construction of the self away from biological drives as advocated by Freud towards language and culture. According to Lacan, their unconscious was structured like language. It was a domain of signs, signifiers, and concepts that had to be decoded using techniques similar to those pioneered by Saussure. In his Ectric, Lacan sets out to challenge or destabilize the concept of the coherent unitary self and replace it with an idea of the self as a factory of fantasy. Central to this argument was the concept of the mirror stage. Lacan suggests that during the mirror stage, The infant comes to look at itself in the mirror and thereby creates the illusion of self-unity. Post-Lacanian psychoanalytic cultural theory. By deftly combining psychoanalytic theories of the self with structuralist understanding of culture, Lacan's work has exerted a distinctive impact on cultural theory, especially in the areas of psychoanalytic feminism and literary and film criticism. Work in this post-structural tradition has several key features. There is a focus on the ways that identities or subject position are created by language, text, and the way they relate to power. Next, ideas of essential, fixed, or true self are problematized. There is a focus on the shifting, multiply, and constructed qualities of this conscious or an unconscious self. Third, desire, fantasy, and illusion are understood to reproduce inequalities because they are constructed by symbolic structures that are in turn shaped by relation of power. Postmodern psychoanalytic cultural theory. All the Oedipus by Gil Deleuze and Felix Guattari is perhaps the most important text in this tradition. The book celebrates schizophrenia, fragmentation, and desire as radical tendency in contemporary culture. The schizophrenic is elevated to a kind of heroic status as the carrier of an unregulated non-Oedipal self. In schizophrenia, Deleuze and Guattari detect fluidity, unpredictability, and multiplicity, which threaten the order and authority necessary for capitalism reproduction. This desire no longer reside in individual subjectivities, but rather circulate in random and incoherent ways through human bodies and psyches that operate as deciphering machines. They write, for example, that schizophrenia is the universe of productive and reproductive desiring machine, universal primary production as the essential reality of man and nature. Desire constantly couples continuous flows and partial objects that are by nature fragmentary and fragmented. Desire causes the current to flow itself, flows in turn, and break the flows. Concluding comments. First, many of the central claims of psychoanalysis remain untested. Second, it is a field marked by internal division with innumerable factions and cliques. Third, like other major fields, psychoanalysis theory has constructed its own language. Fourth, it operates with a prior belief that people are depressed, neurotic, sick, and so on. Fifth, there are enduring problems with the application of a model designed to cure troubled individuals to the sociological analysis of collective phenomena. Thank you.